Welcome everybody to the 6 p.m. Redevelopment Agency meeting of July 9th, 2019. Let the roll call reflect that all board members are present. I've asked council or board member Jaburka to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please rise. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please consider joining us for a moment of silence. Thank you. Okay, first item on our agenda is approval of minutes for the minutes of the special meeting held January 22nd, 2019. Board Member White.
Yes, Chair Nadolski, I've read those and they seem to be correct.
Thank you. For the minutes of the special meetings held February 5th and 26th, 2019, Board Member Heyer.
Yes, Chair Nadolski, I have reviewed those minutes and have found them to be accurate to the best of my recollection. And make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Second. We have a motion by Board Member Heyer, second by Board Member Blair to adopt the minutes. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thanks for doing the extra reading, you guys. Next item on our agenda is a public hearing. We'll be hearing about fiscal year 2019-2020 budget amendment. I believe this would be Mrs. Stout.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you this evening. The action before you is to recognize an additional budget appropriation in the redevelopment agency in the CBD Mall and the Kiesel area, RDA areas specifically. In the CDB Mall, we're asking for a transfer from the Ogden City Facilities Fund of $295,000. These are funds that are accumulated from CAM fees that are paid in to maintain the parking towers. They're set aside in the capital reserve account. Currently, there's a balance of $295,000 in that account. And due to some repairs necessary at the parking towers, we're asking for that transfer to be made. Additionally, we're asking for an appropriation of $250,000 in the Kiesel area RDA. This is from prior year tax increment revenue that has been received but not used. We're asking to reappropriate it for a contractual service with a design workshop for $250,000. And I do have Monica Kapp here to talk a little bit about the Junction parking tower. I'll turn the time over to her.
Thank you, Lisa. Monica.
I don't know if we forward that. Oh, so right here. Okay, perfect. All right, so my purpose of being here tonight is to discuss the Junction ramp. We have quite a bit of need at the Junction for the parking structures and the ramp, and I think we've taken pretty good care of them over the years, considering that the age of them and the fact that they were cut in half, put back together, and we've gotten great use out of them, and it's free parking for the public, and we would like to maintain the ramp and the parking structures. Right now, the most critical need is the ramp, and we did some improvements to it. Back in 2015, we added some structural beams to help make sure that the structure was viable, and those are completely fine. We also did a sealant on the entire ramp, but unfortunately that sealant is just not holding up to the conditions that it's being exposed to. And I have some examples here where the concrete is spalling, and in some of them you can see that the rebar is actually exposed underneath. So we actually have 2 mats of concrete. We have the first mat, which is on top, and then the bottom mat, which is the underneath part of the ramp. The bottom part is fine. All we have issues with is the top part. And we, in the past, have gone out to a general contractor and a structural engineer and done the work that way. We have had a restoration specialist come and look at it, and they have given us a bid. They are actually a competitively bid contractor, and they will actually come and fix the ramp and make it so that it meets industry standards, the requirements of industry standards. And part of that they will fix, if you can see this picture here. If you've driven on the ramp, we have a couple of transitions where if we don't have the metal plate on there, then you would hit the front of your car with it. Those are really only supposed to be 1/4 inch or less. The ramp should be meeting the parking structures within 1/4 of an inch or less. We will be fixing those, and we will be changing out the expansion joints as well and replacing those. And so we're proposing that we do this so that we can make sure that we get another 15 to 20 years out of the ramp, and we'll be doing some other proposals for the parking structures, but this is the most critical need at this point. And the company that we've gotten a bid from, they actually specialize in masonry restoration, waterproofing, concrete, especially with parking garages and stadium restoration. And their references are up there. And I don't know if you have any questions for me or...
Any questions for Monica?
Jerry, I have just one question.
You bet.
So the metal plates, is that because of a bad design, or is that because it's settled, or?
It's settled, actually. And I don't know if Justin Anderson's here. He can give more on the engineering of why it would settle. And that's why one of the reasons we put those structural beams in 2015. But we'll actually change the ramp and remove the concrete and then pour concrete that will match it to the same level as, so we won't need those plates on there.
And the structure will be fine.
That was my question as well. I've had some people ask me about the structural soundness of the whole parking deck, and so these are the only challenges or things that need to be fixed at this time?
So we did have a structural engineer do an analysis last year of the actual parking garages, and believe it or not, they're actually in pretty good condition. We're looking at doing some waterproofing on the top deck, because that's where we run into our issues. And if we can eliminate the water issues that we have, and that's not going to be as expensive as the ramp repair, but and we're not really talking about that tonight, but we do have plans to do that so that we don't have any structural damage within the structures. So, and the one area where we did have a little bit of issue, we installed a steel I-beam as per the specs of the structural engineer, and he was satisfied with that. So that is the status.
Thank you, Monica.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Okay. Is anybody going to give any background on the contract? Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate you having us this evening. If approved this evening, the $250,000 appropriation would go to fund the last remaining phases of the contract that the city has with Design Workshop, and this will allow us to complete the analysis and the study for a downtown master plan. What that will tell us is a couple of things that will help us understand what the development patterns of the downtown should be and could be over the next decade or so. It'll help us to establish design guidelines, policies, and criteria to govern that development, and it will also put us in a position to receive the investment that would be associated with those potential developments. So it's a wonderful opportunity to kind of take a look at where we've been, where we are, and where we need to go over the next little while in the downtown.
Thank you, Brandon. Any questions for Brandon?
I do have one, Chair. Could you address the relationship between what we're going to get from design workshops and our potential upcoming general plan?
So in the general plan, there's a number of sections in the general plan, and obviously those things are related to what happens in the downtown. The downtown, the CBD community plan and the downtown general design guidelines haven't really been updated for a number of years.
20 years or so.
Right, and so this exercise will update those things automatically, and then a step following that update would be then to look at the general plan and say, how do these things fit back into the general plan, and amend the general plan in accordance to that.
So your intention is that this will help to inform the new general plan building process?
Correct.
Okay, that's. I just wanted to get that on the record. And
This is not a general plan update. It's not the general plan.
it
but
may
as
end
you
up being
say-
an element of the new general plan, however, right?
Correct, yeah, a big element,
This is how we envision what we want the general plan to help us achieve. Right?
as it relates to the downtown, yeah.
Good.
Any other questions for Brandon?
I have a question. Can you speak a little bit to the sole source of the contract for design workshop?
Right. So under current law, we have the administration has the ability to select a vendor that fits certain criteria. We chose Design Workshop for a number of reasons. One is the proprietary methodology that they use to take a process like this and infuse economics into it. And so this isn't just a mere planning document where we're looking at forms and shapes, and this use should be here and this use should be over there. We utilize their proprietary methodology to help bake in the economics of the whole process so that we can understand how to build a sustainable budget. What development patterns are going to help us reach our revenue goals and and be able to provide the services that we need to as a city over time. So that was a big choice. The other big choice is relativity. So we have some unique circumstances in the downtown in terms of our age, location to a river, those kind of things. And so we chose a vendor that had some really specific, relatable experience. Design Workshop was the firm that was responsible for the downtown Denver revitalization. And so they have a lot of those same unique features that we have as a downtown. And so we felt those two things were major factors in the sole source selection.
So they're going to come in on a regular basis and visit the city and look at it to develop their plan.
Correct. They've already been here a number of times. A contingent of Ogden has been to Denver to look at some things there and to hear some things. They'll be coming back a number of times. If this is approved and we move forward with the additional phases in the contract, there'll be a number of charrettes that will be conducted here. We'll have an entire public engagement strategy that we'll develop as part of this. There'll be a number of open houses, some social media activity and engagement. So it's meant to be an open, transparent, and collective type of a process.
Can you speak to the proprietary process? What specifically is their process that's proprietary?
Well, they have a model, an economic model that they use, and they have staff folks that are economists. So that's kind of unique for a urban design firm. And so those people are baked into this scope of work. And so instead of just, like I said, say these are the types of buildings and the uses that we want in the downtown, we look at things like value per acre. We look at density models that tell us what types of densities make the most sense, not only in terms of use, but in terms of revenue for taxes, so that we can best utilize the resources that we have in infrastructure, roads, those kind of things. So it's really that economic approach, the model that they've developed, it's a proprietary software that they use, and the staff that they have to help kind of walk a client through that.
Okay. And what was the other criteria? It's relativity. So is that based primarily on our assets and what Denver has?
Right.
And their involvement in Denver?
Right. Denver's orientation to the Platte River is similar to our orientation to the Weber River. The fact that the redevelopment of the rail yard was such a big component in the Denver downtown revitalization process as it is here. We have 170 acres essentially abutting our downtown, and they're a great example, both Denver and the consultants that walked the Denver government through that process. They're a great example of what we could be looking at in terms of best practices, risk options, things that might jump at us, funding sources, partners, those kind of things.
Okay. Any other questions for Brandon?
And what have you gotten any feedback from local designers or firms that maybe wanted to be part of the process, or any community feedback at all?
Personally, I have not. I haven't had any feedback from local firms or anybody in the community.
I got one more question. So when we do a sole source contract, how do we know we're spending what is within market rate? I mean, usually when you put out a bid for contracts, you get a bunch of them, you get to look at the cost, and you get to look at what the offering is. You can look at how it relates in terms of relativity and what process they would propose to meet the needs of the contract. So,
right.
I guess I'm just wondering, how do we know we're getting what we're paying for, or that we're not paying an amount that's exorbitant, right?
That's a good question. So in typical procurement, there's generally three methods that one would utilize. The first being a request for proposal. So that RFP process would generally have a defined scope with clear objectives, and a price would be associated with that proposal from the respondent. The second type would be a request for qualifications, which is generally what it sounds like, a request for a firm to present to you all the great things about themselves that would qualify them to do your project. Not necessarily tied to a specific scope and not necessarily tied to a price. The third option is a sole source. And so when you choose a sole source, you generally have an idea of what your request should cost based on experience and research. You generally have an idea of who you want to be participating in that request. And so using the sole source really allows you to, under the requirements of the law, there's only a number of things that would allow you to even use sole source. But once you meet those requirements, then using the sole source method allows you to drill in and get what you need without having to go through the process of trying to develop a market for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So how does that address the cost?
Well, again, based on experience, based on other master plans that we've done in the city, based on feedback from our peer cities, we can gauge a price point in which we would feel comfortable spending. So we've done a number of master plans in the recent months and years, and so we kind of have an understanding of what something like this would cost.
Okay. As it relates to master plans, we have done a number of them, and they've taken a lot of time and money, staff resources, et cetera. But in the contract, they mention a lot of those master plans, right?
Right.
And then they also mention how this work is going to either relate to those or draw them in. Some of the items, it seemed like maybe they were going to offer some services that we've already kind of done in some of those master plans. I hope we're not going to be redundant in some of those efforts. We need to make use of the investments we've already made. We don't need to pay someone again to do what we've already done. You know what I mean?
Correct. So instead of replicating the plans that have been done, that assimilation of the plans is important so that we make sure that what we're adopting is informed by all the other work that we've done in the past. We have revised the original scope to reduce some of those perceived redundancies because we had some of the same concerns. So we've honed that down, and by doing so, we've been able to add the Union Station campus plan scope of work into the revised contract under the same price. So by taking out some things, we were able to add other things. And in this case, it's an important thing as it relates to the overall downtown. So at the end of the scope of work, which we hope to be sometime at the end of this year, we would end up with the downtown master plan deliverables as well as a Union Station campus plan deliverable. And that's new and I think beneficial.
Okay. And how much did we pay for the first phase?
So we broke the contract into two. The first and second phase were part of the first contract, and I believe that was $225.
Okay. So we're technically in the third phase.
Technically in the third
Considering
phase,
the third.
correct, yep.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Brandon before we take public comment? Okay. This is a public hearing. This is your opportunity to address the council on this budget amendment. If you wish to address the council, please limit your comments to 3 minutes and state your name for the record.
Hello, Angel Castillo. Thank you all for everything that we're doing. I know this is a lot of stuff. First and foremost, I fully support the revitalization of the parking structure. It is something that is necessary, and we want to make sure we're making repairs prior to them being really critical situations. With regards to a sole source contract, I'm a little uncomfortable with that as a planning commissioner. I'm a little uncomfortable with that as a citizen. I know that some of the staff here had gone to visit Denver, Colorado, and this particular company would be giving us strict design guidelines. Design guidelines, as a planning commissioner, says the buildings must look like this, must use these materials, must be this style, must have this type of setback. And I feel really uncomfortable that none of this board was involved in the selection of that particular company. And I know we all heard about the article that was written about the staff, the administration staff going to Denver. And I know that a lot of the community, and I know some of the people sitting on this board, don't want to look like Denver. I don't want to look like Denver. I want to make sure that we retain our character of Ogden and do something that is supported by the community. The vendor selection process with no weighted bid process, no RDA board consultation, I think that we need to be completely transparent in how we're selecting agencies. And I think that the RDA, as well as the city council, should be connected to the community before making decisions of this is our vision, this is what we want you to look like. Now, I understand that spending $250,000 is going to include some design charrettes, but I am not 100% convinced, and I don't perceive that you are either, that is this the right company? How many companies did we talk to? I mean, there are lots of companies across the United States that specialize in this type of development. I would like to see a weighted bid process because it's not always about money. Sometimes it's about the type of experience a company has, be it a developer or be it a person who is putting together a plan for the city. Sometimes it's about experience, sometimes it is about cost, but I think, and in all fairness, we should be able to be including some of our local organizations. We have an immense amount of talent and drive and passion in local businesses here. Why didn't they get a crack at it? I just want to make sure that before we commit to something that says, these are our design standards, this is what it's going to look like, I can't move from that once I'm a planning commissioner. I mean, that when it comes into planning, if they're already set, that's what they are. And I think we deserve to take a little longer look at it. I'm not saying don't support this. I'm not saying don't support this company. I'm saying take a little more time. Make sure we have a really informed decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
What happened there?
Okay. Does anybody else wish to address the board on this item? Thank you.
I was wondering.
Hello, my name is Shalay Larson. I live at 2520 Jefferson Avenue. I actually came to talk to you guys about something else completely. I didn't even know this was going to be on the agenda. But I feel compelled to speak as the owner of a local design firm who's brought 4 jobs to Ogden. we would have loved to be involved in any small, minuscule part of this process. Obviously, this is not something that we could even remotely begin to compete for, but I just wanted to say that for the record. So, thank you.
Thank you, Shalay. Anybody else care to address the board?
Mr. Chair, is this about anything or is this about
This is about this item.
Okay,
We will have the anything.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. Okay, anybody else care to address the board on this item? Okay,
Chair Nadolski, I would make a motion that we close the public hearing.
second, we have a motion by Board Member Heyer, second by Board Member Blair to close the public hearing. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Thank you for the comments, helpful comments. Board members, any additional comments from board members?
I would hope that we would reach out as we go into this process to local businesses and give them an opportunity also to be part of this process that we're talking about here. Surely that would strengthen the vision that we would have for Ogden.
Chair,
Yes.
just a quick procedural question here. I'm wondering why these two items are on the same voting place,
Oh, gotcha.
and could they not be?
Well, we're just doing one single budget amendment, so it's one budget.
Because
opening.
I personally, I'm in favor of supporting the repairs for the parking structures, but I don't know that I necessarily want to support the other item.
Okay.
And I don't mean to put anybody in a hard position now, but I'm just wondering about it.
Sure. So let's. I was gonna actually. I made a note to review the timeline we were on. This was one of the items we
Yeah.
pulled out in my motion
Yeah.
to give ourselves more time. So there was a comment from the public about take some more time. So we shared that sentiment when we made that decision. So, but it's a good point about breaking it up. Would it be two different budget openings if we did that, or?
Well, you could take action tonight if there's a motion and a second and
Okay.
at least 4 council members approve the separation.
Okay. So we would, I think there's some council members that might have a different vote, and even if it doesn't change the outcome, I think it would be a good idea for us to allow council members to express their opinions through their vote for the individual items, if that's okay.
So, sure, and I'd be happy to make a motion whenever it's
An
appropriate.
amendment?
It would need to be a motion, yeah,
Motion
which,
to amend.
Did we talk about this in our work session of separating the two items?
no.
Okay.
No, but I think I guess I wish we had thought of it sooner, but there is a contrast in the two items, so I respect that. And I think a member of the public said more, wished for some tiny sliver of involvement. I think, that's what we as a council are looking for as well. We've wanted more involvement, but we want to make sure there's more involvement and awareness, and more time for the public to be a part of this as well. I guess I personally, I don't have any concerns about the qualifications of the firm. Maybe about the openness or the fairness, but the times that we've spent with them so far, they're clearly a qualified organization. It's not to me, that's not a matter of that. I do hope that the amount that this request is for is in line with a market rate. That's why I asked those questions. Does anybody else have any other comments before we entertain a motion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I think that some of the concerns that the public has shared with respect to the flexibility going forward I think we can do that. I think we can accommodate that. These guys work for us. We don't work for them. Chalet, I think there can be some input from your expertise. I mean, we've always looked for you to give expertise in areas that you have expertise in. And there are many others that I think I personally would like to hear from as a governing body. I also don't have any concern with the qualifications. It was not just staff that went to Denver. There were 5 of us that went there also. Mm-hmm. So we got to experience and we asked a lot of hard questions there. And I think that while I don't want to look like Denver, I don't think that that's something that is, because they're from Denver, that's going to, the model will be Denver. I think it's going to be Ogden, whatever Ogden wants to be. So I personally don't have a lot of concern about whether these are together or whether they're separate. I think it's appropriate, though, before we take the vote for council members or board members to express their concerns and their anxiety about moving forward. But I don't see any problem with keeping it together.
And I'll just comment that I'm not comfortable with the sole source contract as it's been presented to us. I'm totally for creating plans, for using opportunity zone resources, but I'm just not comfortable with that sole source contract. And I understand that we've met the legal obligation to do that process, but I'm just not comfortable with it when it's such a huge part of how our daily lives will be affected. And I don't question firm, et cetera. It's just I'm not comfortable with that.
Yep. Okay.
That's why I made the first statement that we ought to include the local businesses in our area so that they can participate because they have an interest in Ogden. I'm sure this firm also would look at Ogden and gather that information. And they could be a valuable resource to this company that is coming forward. But we ought to reach out to our local businesses to give them an opportunity to share their talents.
But they won't be paid for just their public input.
Right.
No, but they could be part of the process.
Well, I guess I feel like, I mean, they're locals and they're residents of the community, so their input is very valuable, but it's actually their job too, so we need to acknowledge that.
Well, we could incorporate them into the process and give them the payment that they would require.
Let's do it.
Although I think what we discussed was to have a fair and open competitive process. If that kind of a process leads us to local contractors because they have local experience, that's one thing. But we also need to remember that in our form of government, the mayor is absolutely entitled, has all rights within our form of government to enter into contracts. So it's our role in the checks and balances to evaluate the appropriation that goes with it. So here we are.
Which is why we pulled it off of
Which is why we pulled it off. We wanted to
and had a work session about it.
Yeah, we did have a work session. Had a lengthy discussion in the work session as well. So this is not a new conversation for us. I think for the public, it might be more of a new conversation that they're hearing more detail about. And that's part of the problem for me is I don't have a lot of objection to what's being proposed. It's a good thing for us to be doing, to be envisioning our future, to be strategic about our growth, and to identify the things that we want in our community and where, right? So that we can go after it. I mean, that's what communities do. I think so far, this to me is our effort to bring this to the light, right? Bring light to this item. We've got a decision to make tonight about the budget, but I do hope, depending on how this decision goes, I do hope that this is the beginning of being a lot more open and transparent in public with the public that's impacted by this. That's our goal. That's our role. So that's why we made the decision to pull this item out specifically. But if council members want to consider each of these items separately, I'm happy to entertain a motion to do that as well.
Chair Nowalski, I'd like to make a motion to do that.
to separate these items, however.
Can I make a suggestion on how you might frame that?
When a lawyer asks that question, the answer should always be yes.
So rather than just create two things out of one, you ought to take one of two votes, either approve it as is or approve it with a modification that strips out the appropriation you don't want. And you can either do that first or second. You could vote on the whole thing first. If it goes down, you can vote on the modification. Or you can do it in reverse and have the modification motion happen first. And then if that fails, you can take a vote on the whole thing. So there's kind of two paths to go forward, but I think that'd be cleaner than stripping it into two council actions.
Okay. Good advice. Thank you. Appreciate it. I will make haste to botch that.
I don't think you have to let somebody else botch it.
Yeah, I
You
know.
just say it
I'll let someone else take a shot at it.
Well, that's what I was thinking. So if I understand our legal counsel correctly, one option would be to make a motion for this resolution as a whole. If it doesn't pass, then break it down, right? Or modify it. Is that correct?
We do have to deal with the motion
Luis?
that is on the floor.
Yep.
Councilmember Lopez, if you want to withdraw that motion that you made in lieu of another one, or do you want it voted on?
It also hasn't been seconded, so it could fail.
It's true.
By lack of a second.
But it is.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? If we were to do an amendment without the appropriation for the contractual services, can we then have a vote for the contractual services separately? I think that's what Board Member Lopez was actually suggesting, was having individual votes on each of the items.
Right.
Yes.
That's what you were suggesting.
Yeah.
The only complication is that you create two ordinances where you came to vote on one. That's the only complication.
Right.
We'd have to bring you back another ordinance for you to do. And so it just practically, it's easier to take a motion to amend, if that's what you want to do first, stripping it out. And if that doesn't carry, then it would go to the final unmodified.
So if this is, if I understand this correctly, then the motion would say, make a motion to amend this proposed resolution to strip the
yes.
To strip the I don't have to strip the portion,
the appropriation.
So motion to amend this proposed resolution to strip the appropriation of for the Keysol project.
Would you state the amount of that?
$250,000.
Thank you. To take out the Keysol project, strip the Keysol project, Keysol CRA in the amount of $250,000.
We have a motion by Board Member Lopez. Do we have a second?
I don't know if that's what we want to do.
Oh, we're finding out. And no second? Okay, I'll rule that motion fails for lack of a second. So we will entertain a motion for the item as presented.
Chair Nadolski, may I make a motion then that we adopt resolution 2019-9 as listed in the agenda?
Second.
We have a motion by Board Member Heyer, seconded by Board Member Blair, to adopt proposed resolution 2019-9 as presented. This is a roll call vote.
Board Member Blair.
Aye.
Board Member Heyer.
Aye.
Board Member Lopez.
No.
Board Member Stevens.
Aye.
Board Member White.
Aye.
Vice Chair Chaburka.
No.
Chair Nadolski.
Aye. That passes. Good conversation. Sorry to the public who watched us wrestle through that. It's pretty common. there's so many specifics that we have to make sure we follow to the T to make sure we're doing things the right way. Legally, of course, which is why we keep a lawyer on hand.
Chair Nadolski, it would be good to give the no vote people some time at this point.
I think it's okay to give everybody time to provide comments on why we voted the way we did. So,
May I?
absolutely.
So I'll keep it short because I don't like hijacking meetings. I said it in the work session as well. But when we talk about including the community, it can't be afterwards. It has to be before. And I think that's something that some of us I have been talking about and probably yelling about since I was elected to office about 3.5 years ago. And I've been faced with resistance, and I think I've been faced with somewhat disregard for my concerns. And this is when we don't put the public and our community and our citizens and the people that elect us into office first and foremost when we're thinking about this. In this case, what we're talking about a potential huge change that will change our city entirely. We're not saying it's necessarily bad. We're just saying it's a big deal. It's a big change. And so on principle, I'm voting on principle to say, you know, if I was elected to be here, to come here and stay quiet and not voice my opinion and not raise my concerns, then why am I doing here? So there's been too many things that have happened. Too many. And again, I'll stick to my promise to not use this as so much as a venting pulpit, but just to, as I said in a previous meeting, I'm going to use the power of the mic to speak about what I don't think is right. Thank you.
Thank you. We hope for nothing less than for you to say what you think is right.
Thank you.
And like you said in the work session, you said, I'm sorry if I'm being too aggressive, and that's not something you need to apologize. We all ran for an office. We were all voted by the community who elected us.
And if I may address that, actually, Chair, it's important for me, the reason why I say that. And the reason why I say that is because this is a message for our Ogden City staff. I want you to know that when I make these votes and when I speak like these, is my concerns are not directed at you, at our Ogden City employees. They're directed at the high executive levels of the administration. So that's why I say I'm sorry, because I don't mean to pin or put people in uncomfortable positions. But I appreciate that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, when we get elected, we get handed a lot of things, but one of them is a mic, so it's okay to use it.
Thanks.
That's what we're here for. So, and that's why we have this. So, any other comments from any other board members?
You voted no, did you want?
Yeah, I mean, I think I made my comments before, but that's basically it. I really support making sure the infrastructure of the junction parking structure really good. And I believe in the project. I just don't believe in the process went by to get there.
Yeah. Anyone else care to express opinions about their yes votes?
I have expressed this time and time again of separating those, and would continue to encourage us to separate any of the budget openings or changes. So.
Anyone else?
I know it creates extra work. I do. I know that. But.
Oh, I don't think we mind separating them. It would have been easier if we knew earlier, but that's okay too. It's absolutely okay.
I agree with what has been said here. I think we need to look at our work sessions and see if we can refine those a little bit so that these questions can be asked at that particular time. I think if we were considering of doing something like this, it should have been maybe asked in our work session at that particular time. And
sure.
And I don't know if there's something we need to do differently in that session to to address those things.
Well, it's something we can keep in mind too as leadership. We approve the agenda each week, so we'll keep that in mind.
I think just a comment to that too. Sometimes, things happen between, we've had kind of an interesting schedule of late, and it'll continue to be that way over the summer. Sometimes things happen over the course of that time that maybe we didn't think about things like that. Things will change. Things will happen in meetings that we need to be ready to be flexible about and not have everything planned to the T before it happens.
Especially when we have so many budget items. Sometimes they're all combined because it's the budget, right? Can't break them all out. But
Correct.
in the future, if someone has concerns about an item, myself included, we'll make sure to consider that for procedural purposes. Anyone else? Okay. I actually do wish to talk to my yes vote. I think I made some of my comments clear in my before we took a vote, but I did and do have concerns about the process. So I think we always do. That's our thing. We are here for a reason. We don't want to be difficult. We don't want to take longer, but we do want to do it right. And we do want to be a part of it, because when we're a part of it, you all are a part of it too. The community is part. This is your avenue to be a part of it. And so if we don't bring these things to the surface, then we're not allowing ourselves, nor are we allowing you to participate. And so to me, what we've done procedurally is a really important step in the right direction. I voted yes because I do believe in what's being proposed. Even though I haven't liked how it's come about, we are struggling to land in a place that is a good place for Ogden. And that good place is with all of you at the table and a lot of people that aren't here tonight. So I voted yes based on my faith in you to come and participate and be a part of this. I think it's important work, and we have to have you. We have to have a ton of input. I don't want to look like Denver, but I saw plenty of things there that I did like. And there's a lot of work to do. So while I do have concerns, the sole source part does concern me as well, but I also I need to trust and recognize that our legal department did review it, that we are in line with statutory requirements. But my yes vote was based primarily on my faith that it will go better in the future and be better and be right. If that doesn't turn out to be the case, then maybe I can look back and regret my vote. Okay, thanks everybody who commented on that item. And thank you, board members, for your candid conversation. I personally really like it. Okay, next item on our agenda is public comments, and this is your opportunity to speak to any item.
Now.
Please state your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Hi, my name is Reverend Monica Hall, and I thank you for the chance to share concerns in this public comment. I'm a resident of Ogden City, and as I read the article this week in the Tribune about the purchase of the Swift property and the acquisition of the city to purchase it, dismissing the seller from all responsibility of waste is really concerning for me. The Tribune used the phrase mind-boggling in their headline and for this investigative report. And the article itself is interesting and mostly factual if you read all the documents that were attached to it. In our local government, and it is even posted, even in the last budget meeting, that there's a structural system here where the citizens of the city, the residents who live here, are at the top of the chain. And underneath that is people who you just talked about this structure now, but you're here and there's an executive branch. And I actually voted for you who are sitting here, and I voted for the mayor, but I did not vote for the RDA committee. And so what I'm saying about this is that there are concerns about this buying, and I want to ask questions which maybe could be answered or maybe not, but why didn't the RDA use the power of the government structure, to pass amendments or enforce building codes?
or laws or force fines to the owner of the building, so that in order to address this, there could have not been any purchase at all if there was no compliance by the owner of the building by city codes. As a resident, not only do we now have paid for an underestimated amount of toxic waste, it's now both, and maybe that's why I feel so passionately about it. I feel that our reputation as a city is somewhere bound up in this, along with our safety. And I find that to be something to be very concerned about. And that for me was a mind-boggling part. I really love this city. And that's why I'm standing here, because, Megan Rapinoe is in an interview right now, and I would much rather be watching her, but I care about what's going on. So I have never invested in any city like I do in this city. And it's been difficult to watch choices made over the last year, especially actions taken in our community. Some things great, right? There are so many great things going with redevelopment, but there are some choices being made, in my opinion, that are causing some real problems with trust. And so I'm asking you as a board and as the executive branch, the RDA even tonight, for there to be some kind of partnership and accountability. The sharing of plans before they're implemented. And tonight, watching you even work through this process was great. I didn't know if this came to you as a recommendation from a committee or if it was something that you could change. It was nice to watch you all work through that process. My time is out. When you love something, you come and share your concerns. I'm just asking for accountability. I'm hoping that there will be a stronger transparency in the working of what you do as a council in conjunction with the executive branch. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to address the board?
Go ahead. Hi there. My name is Cirilo Franco. I'm a resident of Ogden, Utah. And first of all, I want to address two things. The first is a huge thank you to the city. Action, LUPEC, and Image of Northern Utah sent a letter to the city about a week ago, and regarding the immigration raids, the fear in the community, and the city took some quick action in sending out a bulletin on the position of the police force and their play in federal laws. So thank you, and thank you for the 100 copies that were printed out. Those were distributed to the community over the weekend. So that's the first one, so thank you. The second one is regarding the issue of the sale of the Swift building. I too was baffled learning about the sale, and could not imagine how the city would purchase a building without realizing what they were purchasing. Maybe that's just the norm, but I would never buy a house without inspecting it and purchasing it, and I don't think either one of you guys would. So I agree there needs to be some accountability, and I hope that this is a learning experience for the city, and this is a great opportunity to really change some things, because if this is the way we operate, as a citizen of Ogden, I do not want to be paying for unnecessary things like this. I understand that the funding will be coming from I think the depot, but if you really think about it, what could we be doing without those funds instead of cleaning a building that has a lot of toxic waste and that citizens should not be paying for? So I just wanted to take a few minutes and address those two items. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's John Worthington. I'm a citizen of Ogden City. I wanted to speak about the purchase of the Swift meatpacking plant as well. And I'd like to start off by saying that I'm thankful that we're cleaning up and remediating what is essentially an unlicensed toxic waste dump near downtown. It's important to acknowledge that. When I read the article, a couple of things struck me. And the first one was a quote by Mr. Cooper talking about the reduction in the purchase price of the property, which was $600,000, was, quote, reflective of what we anticipated the cleanup costs to be. The EPA site manager, Paul Peronard, estimates the cleanup to be $2 million. If you read further in the article, the difference in estimates between Mr. Cooper and Mr. Peronard in demolition costs is again between $500,000 and $2 million. So it looks like there's a consistent pattern, at least in the quotes in the article, of the city of Ogden underestimating the costs of dealing with this property by a factor of 4. I'm relatively new to the city. I'm certainly relatively new to taking an interest in the redevelopment. I don't know if this pattern has persisted across other problems, but that's a really big multiplier when we look at the finances of the city. None of us would buy anything. None of us would buy into a project that we found out was going to cost 4 times what we thought it was going in. I'm also concerned about the use of the funds from the depot. I don't know what that money was planned for, but there are needs that won't be met in the city because we're putting them towards this cleanup. And I'd like to encourage everyone to figure out some set of policies, procedures that would help us avoid making these mistakes in the future. The RDA does a lot of good work. I'm very happy with what's happening with Ogden, but we can't repeat this sort of exercise. Thank you.
Thank you. Just so everybody knows who is commenting, we are taking notes of all of the questions that come up, and we look forward to having more time to talk about these.
Hi, Sue Wilkerson, 2563 Jefferson. I'm here tonight because the vacation rental ordinance is not working. It took us over 2 years to come to some type of ordinance. However, there is no enforcement of this ordinance. After the 2 years it took us to pass, the fees to those very few of us who did get licensed are 14 times the cost of a regular rental under the Good Landlord program. Not only have we been notified that there's no enforcement, but the business licensing agency has been completely non-responsive to my requests for a list of those who possess licenses. And I'll email this to you so that you have it in your possession.
Thanks.
So that is from a website that's called airdna.co, and it is showing a marked increase in vacation rentals. Oh, on the East Bench, imagine that. It is single-family zoning. It's not even allowed to be vacation rentals, but when you see the dots on this map, you'll be very clear that there are a ton of them. The problems with non-enforcement, not over and above the non-regulation, which means that there's no fire extinguishers, there's no egress requirements, there's none of this huge checklist that those of us that had to get licensed had to go through. And none of this is being addressed. Code enforcement is very happy to write up couches and lawns, but nothing is happening with vacation rentals. The loss of the revenue to the city of just the licensing fees alone, based on the dots in this map, is staggering. The loss of potential tax revenue, because you don't have them licensed, you have no idea if they're filing their necessary lodging tax and losing revenue on that side. The abundance of this illegal competition has dropped the rates so dramatically for those of us who have played by the books. And I think that's my, it's like, why are we passing ordinances? And I think Mr. Williams said it, oh, we're creating another ordinance. And I said under my breath, another one that we're not going to enforce. So I need to know who we report these illegal units to, because if the city is not going to enforce them, I'll be happy to turn them in. But I need to know who to, because no one's responding. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sue.
Thanks, Sue.
And thank you for giving your license.
Yeah. Brandon. Join these. They're from Sue. She can get this.
We'll start my time until I get down.
No worries. I won't start the timer until you're ready.
First and foremost, I want to say hi to you guys and everything, and I want to thank you. Ralph Price is my name, new to Ogden, but I met you a few weeks ago, and you guys took an interest in what I was talking about, being with more with diversity, more with handicaps, more with people with alternative ways of getting around. And you all have kind of responded, Ben especially, in this, and I want to thank you for that. Mr. Lopez, thank you for everything you do, for diversity and everything, too. I want to take time real quick, and I just say that these two over here, Ron and Anna, need to be honored. They were recognized for their work that they do in mental health, and that's by the governor's office and everything. They won an award. That's an Ogden business. That's a Roy business. That's a Weber County business that has been leading the way in this type of cause that are just now being jumped on board by Salt Lake City and other places. One of the things I'm late here now for is I was just down by Harrisville Walmart, and I'm tracking all these different roads. I've got Ben on commitment, and he's going to take a walk with me. I'd love to have the rest of you be committed to a walk with me, because I'd like you to see how I have to walk, and I'd like you to see how I have to shake. I have to go back a half a block to find a driveway to go down to dodge cars so I can find another driveway to get onto the sidewalk. I want you to just see how when we're driving along, like you kind of walking as we call it, you two ladies, you guys got it easy, because the sidewalk will end and there's a trail for you. We look and we stop. It's too far. It's that much of a drop. And then we got to go back and find a driveway, get out in the road, dodge cars, and find a way back up. I want you to know that what I'm here for is I'm a big mouse. You guys know that. I will be back. So come on, join us and look into some of these issues that we have as handicapped people. We're not people that are handicapped. We are people with a handicap, is all we are. We'd like you to consider that instead of thinking us as handicapped persons and persons that don't deserve the same thing as you two legs do. We deserve that same thing that you represent us to. And I've been going from Washington to Harrison and from 2nd to 30th. I got it down. And I finally got the attention of a few people that are in the area there, and they're looking to smooth their driveways out. They're looking to take that ledge. It's great when you put up a new sidewalk. I see how smooth it is, but you put a ledge that big to get onto the sidewalk. I can't do that. I can't even enter it. So I can't have that smooth ride. I'd like you to walk with me, physically see these things. Ben, I commend you for sitting in a chair for the time you did. But I do it 24/7, 7 days a week. Thank you.
Thank you.
And guess what? Somebody gets to get my cell phone. So,
Brandon's coming.
Raptor deserter.
Oh.
Last 3 games, hasn't been there.
Thanks, Ralph. We know you'll be back, and we're not scared.
Oh, yeah,
we're looking forward to it. Okay, anybody else?
Hi, Shalay Larson, 2520 Jefferson Avenue. I also just wanted to take a minute to speak to the vacation rental issue. The city spent 2 years with a very open and very public process and lots of meetings and work sessions to craft this really great vacation rental ordinance. And the whole purpose of this was to make sure that vacation rentals didn't overrun our community. There's a lot of really bad precedents for vacation rentals in other communities that are just taking over. And the unfortunate side effect of that, when they're completely unchecked, is that it does drive up the cost of housing and it drives down home ownership. Both of those things are things I think that our community values a lot, having affordable housing and having home ownership. There's also a very legitimate health safety concern, because if people are basically running a hotel out of their house, they should make sure that they have all the safety standards and egresses and things in place so that someone doesn't die in a house fire. And I hope that we don't have to have that tragedy happen in order for us to start, taking a serious look at this. I do understand that the city's hands are tied, thanks to our wonderful legislature, in terms of how you can regulate this ordinance. But I did just want to draw your attention to how many, there's just been an explosion in the last year, and a lot of them are in places that couldn't even be legal if they wanted to. So we either need to go back and rewrite the ordinance, or we need to enforce the ordinance. And with that, I just had a follow-up question, or two follow-up questions. Who do we report? Because I would be glad to go search the internet and turn in a lot of these illegal ones myself. Who can we report those to? And how do we know that our concerns or our complaints are being followed up on? So, and since I have a whole minute left, I just wanted to add a suggestion on the topic of procurement. When we go after RFPs in Salt Lake, they have a special weighting for local firms. And I've noticed that in the RFPs that we've pursued for Ogden City, that there's no such weighting. And I would really like to see how we could get something like that implemented to give a small advantage to local firms when we are competing on RFPs. So thank you.
Thank you, Shalay. We had at least one more, I think.
Hi, I'm Anna Davidson. The whole SWIFT thing kind of gave me, I read that article too and was a little put back, but I'm curious as to what's going on in the old Fred Meyer parking lot, because that brought to light, I remember when that happened, that they only had a certain amount of time to build that hospital before they had to pay back the funds for tear down, and nothing's happened. So I was just curious, that kind of just made me think about that again. Every time I drive down there, I'm like, that looks so pretty. So I was just curious if they've had to pay those funds back, or if they're beyond that time frame, or if there's anything actually going on with that, because I think those community hospitals would be awesome, but if they're not going to do it, then they need to be responsible for paying those funds back. So that was just one of those things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Angel Castillo. I too was taken aback by the piece in the Trib about the Swift building. And the reason I'm taken aback is because I have a perception of the City Council and the RDA's board behavior. The City Council and the RDA board that I know and I trust does things like contracting an agency for a citizen feedback survey, adjusting your budget proactively to meet that anticipated survey, formulating a 5-year plan that's fiscally sustainable. That tells me that you really care and you're doing your job. And it is my perception that you all care deeply about the citizens that you represent, which is why I'm completely boggled with this toxic waste situation at the Swift building. I can only imagine that you were not given transparent and accurate information before you approved purchasing a building without a complete inspection and releasing the seller from any responsibility for environmental cleanup toxic waste, which is going to cost us upwards of $2 million, which, by the way, is almost half the amount we need to raise the salary of our police officers to match Salt Lake City. I and other residents have spoken with and are disappointed to discover this costly mistake in a newspaper article. We should be involved in hearing part of this process before it even gets to this. Our citizens want and deserve administration transparency, and I'm asking you as an RDA board, as a city council, to demand accountability from the administration as you did with the military exercise. You did an amazing job of making sure that all of the citizens' questions were answered and put out in a thoughtful manner so that we could understand what really happened and where the ball was dropped. So I'm asking you to tell us where and how the mistakes happened and what you're going to do to assure that it doesn't happen again. And I also strongly encourage you to examine addressing commercially blighted properties with solutions other than purchasing. They exist. Many cities across the United States utilize vacant commercial building tax with great success. And it's an additional revenue stream until the owner complies. And you can even get creative with ordinance to visually benefit Ogden. Build in an option to allow vacancy so as long as windows are maintained and a full-scale, world-class mural wrapping the building, $150,000 for that type of mural is a much more palatable option than a multi-million-dollar purchase hit to our budget. Money that we don't have, money that we need to maintain our infrastructure, money that we need to pay our officers a rate that they'll stay here instead of leave. So I'm really asking you to take a look at thinking outside of the box instead of just purchasing. What can we do to work with building owners? And building owners don't want to accrue daily fines. So there are other palatable options, and I encourage you to examine those. And I'd really like to see the same kind of response to our community that you gave us with the military exercise. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to address the board? Okay, I think we made it. Okay, we've been taking notes of all the questions. We got a few more issues than we were anticipating. That's okay. I'll start from the bottom of my list and work up since they're fresher. But I asked Vice Chair Traburka, and I know other council members keep notes of the questions as well. But the Fred Meyer payment, that was a question we had been asking quite a bit in the past, but that payment was actually never made, and so we didn't have to get reimbursed. So, yep.
It may be noted, Chair, that we've asked that on several occasions, and whenever we have a report from the mayor, and I would like to see some progress in that property. We need to go to maybe phase 2 or plan 2 of that property. So,
yeah, I think we'd all like to see progress on the property. Administration and council combined. Everybody wants to see progress there, because we can't force the private industry to follow through on the plan that was in place. But maybe we do need to be more mindful of the expenditures to make sure that we have more ripe proposals before we move to demolition. I think control of the property is an advantage, but it's a benefit to the community. But if it's not followed up quickly with redevelopment, I think that's a trend that I'm hearing a lot of and seeing a lot of myself.
I think we had a viable candidate for that property. It's just that the process did not work out.
Yeah. Ralph, I appreciated your comment. I made a note because I think it was an important piece of wisdom. You said you're not someone who has a handicap. You're a person with a handicap. It's an important distinction. I wrote it down. Thanks for sharing it. I do look forward to getting together with you. I really thought we were going to pull it off yesterday, but yeah. So the VRBO issues, I'll have to punt to the administration on the enforcement and who to contact and how do we ensure that people are informed of the follow through.
Thank you. I appreciate the question. And after we passed our vacation rental ordinance, or the council did, the state actually passed some legislation that doesn't allow us to go search out violators. They have to be reported to us. And unfortunately, our hands are tied by state law because our city ordinance does not trump state law. If you want to send those, and I didn't know we were having problems responding to those, if you'll send those to me, I will make sure they happen, and I will also make sure that we find out why we're not responding or if we're responding to complaints, and I will be more than happy to get back with you. Also, could I answer one more that Chalet had?
Yeah.
The wait for local firms used to be in the process of bidding here in the city. The city council several years ago decided that to take that out. So we haven't had that in for several years, but that was part of the purchasing process many, many years ago. I hope that answers that.
See, this is why we have public processes. That's not something that we're tracking on. When someone in the public brings it to our attention, that's our job. So Vice Chair Chaburka's already,
It's on my list.
I want to move on that. So thank you for letting us know. And thank you for the update, Mark. Did that cover everything for VRBOs? Did we miss anything in our notes? Just yay or nay?
I guess how do they know that the complaints are being addressed?
He said you'd follow up, but
The fact that city staff.
The list of the licensed ones.
yeah.
Because we don't want to waste
Oh.
your time turning in ones that are.
Thank
Even
you.
though per
Thank
the
you.
ordinance, they're supposed to have their license number on their listing.
Okay.
That would
Okay,
be
we're
that would
good.
be marvelous, and I apologize for city staff not responding, and I will get into that. If you can copy me what you sent and who you sent it to. Thank you.
Okay, I'll forward it.
Thank you.
We'll look forward to the follow-up as well. Is there anything before we move into the SWIFT questions? Did I not? It's hard to make sure we listen and then kind of. Sorry, I gotta ask the board members. They're all. I'm relying on them to help me. We can't have the. Sorry. Any? Did anybody have anything in the notes non-SWIFT related to address? Okay.
There was the comment about the immigration process.
Oh, yeah. About the statement that was given out.
Yeah.
Those are questions to comment.
The comment.
Okay.
I appreciated him asking for you as well, asking for those copies. So that was smart. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark, for
Yeah.
making those available. Appreciate it. Okay. I think we do, as it relates to Ralph's comments, I know he's got a number of concerns. I'm going to spend time with Ralph. I'd encourage you guys to spend time with him too. If your phone rings and it's Ralph's face, I encourage you to take the call. He's a pretty joyful guy to talk to. And you'll never talk to him without him blessing you with God's gifts. So, okay, to SWIFT. Where to begin? So the council, we spent a lot of time bouncing a statement around, and we released it before this meeting. We're sorry it took a little while, but I first became aware of some of the things that were in the article when I was interviewed for the article. So we are still at this point operating on the numbers and the information that we have had and that we based our decision on, and that we went through the due diligence with a very serious purpose and very careful attention to the results. And so I'm not discrediting EPA. I don't know who that guy is. I've never met him. We haven't heard from him as a board. And so it's important for the community to know, like, our place on this and our perspective on this is jolted a little bit right now, and we're trying to figure some things out too. But so we hope you'll see the statement and keep that in mind, because we're not bashful about the decision we made. There's nothing to hide about the decision we made. We're happy. We want to move forward. We don't want that kind of a thing in our community. But our interactions so far were then. Right now is now. So we do have concerns if there's additional costs, but that has not been transmitted to us by the EPA, by the administration, by a contractor, by anybody. So that's really important. Okay. The first one I have in my notes was concern about our reputation as a result of the article, but as a result of the decision and the project. I have the same concern, and it's interesting because when we made that decision, we made a decision that maybe most communities wouldn't make, which is to, remove a blighted property that has contamination that's right next to one of our most treasured resources, the Weaver River. I mean, I'm really proud of a community that would say, we're going to step up and we're going to protect that asset. I mean, can you imagine if these things make it into the river, what that would mean to our reputation? I mean, the cost would be astronomical. The impact, we'd be all over the headlines in the national news It's such a bad travesty. So I'm still happy that we're taking action. I'm nervous about additional costs, but again, that hasn't been translated to us. So I really hope that we can focus on the reputation of the community that's investing in its natural resources, the sustainability of our river. And if anybody knows me, that's what I did for a living for a long time. So I'm still very, very proud of what is to come for there. Anybody else want to add to the comment about our reputation?
Chair, I kept hearing the mistake that was made, and I've got to say, I don't think it was a mistake. With all the information that was available to us, which is all anybody ever has, you make a decision, and I think we made the right one, based on partly on what you said. It is a asset for our community to protect the river, and even that parcel is an important thing. The riparian zone around that, from the river all the way around the development to the west, is an important asset to protect, that I think we have had a responsibility to do. We were not certain on the numbers of the cleanup. We took best case scenarios, worst case scenarios, weighed them the best we could do. We have seen some photos of that. All of this, by the way, did happen in the public view. It happened in a work session. It didn't happen on video, but it did happen on audio, and anybody could have seen what happened there. But it needs to be cleaned up. It's a serious problem over there. And we couldn't, in good conscience, just leave it to be dealt with.
And in terms of dealing with it, we did deal with it here. We did take action here, but I'm still glad we're doing it. But I'm nervous about if there's additional costs. If that is indeed the case,
as am I.
That makes me nervous. I told the reporter that when I was interviewed. Hence my quote of, well, it's mixed feelings. I mean, the worse I hear about it being, I'm sure glad that we're taking action, because that's remarkably dangerous, right? None of us want that in our community, but, and I think we're going to ask some of our own questions too tonight, so we can get some answers from the administration.
I think it's also important to kind of keep things in a bit of a perspective. When you're looking at a newspaper article, the media does tend to want to sell newspapers. They might leave out something that isn't quite as favorable to their urgency or their, to the article that they're publishing. So I think it's important, and I'm glad. That's why I'm really glad the citizens have come to ask us the questions rather than just assume. I hope that they'll read the release, the statement that has been put out by the council, though, because I think it does pretty well list the calendar and sequence of events and the reasoning that everything happened, and there was sound reasoning to do what we did.
Yeah, hopefully we conveyed our thoughts in a way that people
Chair,
can relate. Yeah.
If I have some comments, just, and it might lead into this. So I was chair at the time that this was all happening, and so I'll take responsibility for not communicating better. Since 2017 to 2019, as board member Heyer said, we've gotten better. We're on Facebook. We're doing more communications. More people are able to hear us. But this was aired in the public, and I just want to say that you've all heard me talk about process. And I really believe that this was one that we went through a process. We listened to what we had in front of us. Like any old house, and many of you have done new houses and updated, you pull off the side of the house and you realize that the back of it is trash. And so we did what we could to understand what was in there. And we knew there were issues. That's why when the appraised value was at $1.5 million, we came back. We knew there were issues. We knew that there was going to be demolition costs. We knew that there was crap in the building. And we tried to estimate what that was. And so that's why the offer was made at $400,000. I think that we were dealing with also a woman a wife that had just been widowed, and didn't even know what was in that building herself. And so it was a situation where, if we had all that information today, it might be a different a story. But we had that information right at hand at that time, and I believe that, and still do, that the process was followed, and that that we made the decision that we needed to. We will continue to find crap. I hope that that it doesn't leak and leach into our waterway there. And I would encourage anybody who wants to have a conversation and is frustrated about it to call me. But like I said, I personally feel like we did communicate it in the public, maybe not to the best of our ability that we know now and how to communicate. So I encourage everybody to read the statement as well.
Mr. Chair, one of the questions that has come up both in the residence and even this evening is, the money that we have spent on the SWIFT, could we use other places? And I think it would be well for Brandon to maybe review where that money is coming from so that we have an understanding of that.
Yeah, I've got that one on my list. Respond to Marcia's comment too, I mean, you don't own any more blame than the rest of us. I appreciate you saying that.
Well, I just think that we need, we know more about how to communicate
Right.
today than we did even then. And
Yeah.
so we're,
And we talk about process a lot. It's most often talked about when we're not following it the way we want, but that doesn't mean it's not ever followed. Most of the time it is. In this case, it was. For me, the remaining questions for me, if that were brought up by the article, it's the due diligence, it's the inspection. I mean, we were operating under the due diligence process that's there for that very reason. We did pull back on the original offer because the due diligence suggested it was far worse than we thought. And we did budget for what we thought was worst case scenario. So if that's no longer the case, it's worse than that, then, I'm still not sure if that is the case, but, what's the process in the due diligence, and where can we tighten it up for the next go around? Because these are important matters. There's no question about it. So
I do have a comment, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
I just want to say that, I joined the council more recently than the purchase, but I'm really, really happy and relieved that the EPA is involved in the process. From what I understand of their cleanup procedure, et cetera, that, it's just more efficient. We know that the citizens are being protected. This is public information that's been out there since April that this has been happening. So I actually am really happy that they were engaged and involved in the process, even though I know some people are worried about that as well for other reasons. But for myself, thinking about the safety of the residents, the neighbors, the people that might accidentally go in there or go in there on purpose when they shouldn't be, etc., I'm really happy that we're remediating the situation and dealing with it up front.
Okay. Well, I think unless anybody has any more comments to share before we turn to the administration, I think there's going to be a lot of questions. Mark, if you're prepared to answer some of them for us.
We are, and I think we'll tag team this between Chief Matthews, who has probably more experience with toxic waste than any of us, and also Mr. Cooper and probably Gary Williams will chime in too. Let me just say at the beginning, having come from a newspaper family, I never worked for a newspaper. Well, I did when I was young, but I recognize how difficult it is for a reporter to be able to become an expert on a subject so that they can write an article. And the article, as well as it could be written, isn't totally accurate and doesn't really reflect, I think, some of the conditions that are there. And that's one of the things that we're going to talk about tonight, if that's okay, is the conditions of what really was there that we were facing. I think the other thing is it's premature to assume that if it is a $2 million cleanup, that all of that would be paid for by the city. There is a lot of other sources that a lot of that money is going to come from. And there's things that have been found in there that they couldn't have gotten from any other place than the federal government. And so my guess is that there will be, and having EPA involved, I think it's a good thing because they can tap into the federal government line item to pay for some of those things easier than if we had gotten a different contractor to come in and make the remediation. So I'm going to start with Chief Matthews. I want him. We kind of prepared things just so that we had it on paper so that it made sense. We didn't forget something that was important. We didn't know you had released a statement. I still haven't seen it. So I will look forward to seeing that after the meeting. But we'll do this. Then we'll have Mr. Cooper. He'll respond, and then Gary can respond from up here if that's okay, if you don't feel that's disrespectful. And then all of us will be available to answer questions that we don't cover. Is that okay if we proceed that way?
Awesome.
Yep. Thank you. Chief? He wore his uniform, so he'd look more official.
So we'd recognize him.
Just for you. Council Chair, council members, and I think most importantly to the citizens that have brought this concern up. It's very much appreciative, and I want to start off by saying these comments, my intention is not to be defensive, but to provide information. We all know that in a newspaper article and the small amount of information that can be done, a lot of the story can't be presented. So you have follow-up questions, and it stimulates thought. And the reason I'm here is because this is to me, a target hazard. As soon as I found out about this information from Brandon, we scheduled meetings with each of our shifts, and we changed our approach and how we were going to approach this building in terms of if we had emergency in it. Whether it be a transient who was gaining access, this building was going from a boarded up building warehouse of what we thought was military surplus to a hazardous material waste site in a matter of days as it came to our information. We did not have any knowledge of the amount of volume of hazardous material or waste that was present in this building until we acquired it, and some of those assessments were done. From that point on, protection of firefighters, protection of the community, protection of the environment was our paramount concern. So when I found out that day at 4 o'clock that afternoon, our entire shift that would respond out there in initial alarm was out there in a meeting with Paul Parinard, going through that building and becoming aware of it. By the next week, we had an archangel there because we wanted to make sure no transients were getting inside, and if so, we were going to protect them to the best of our ability, knowing with those known hazards. So we were very much focused on the public safety aspect of this. So this statement I'm going to read is going to hopefully clarify some of the questions that were aroused from that article, and hopefully put you at rest to some degree of that same information that you read in the article. Beginning April 1st, 2019, the Swift building had been predominantly a public safety hazard mitigation event. So as soon as Brandon and the CED had made their move, we kind of moved in, and we were kind of what we thought was the lead city entity working with them because it was an EPA cleanup site. Focus is centered upon protection of the community, EPA workforce, and the environment surrounding the property. As the EPA response unit began their activities, one of the challenges is illustrated in one of their first weekly reports. And I want to inform you, these weekly reports are public information. They have a website that has this site available, all public. I would encourage you to go read it tonight. It'll provide you with a wealth of information about what's gone on out there, what they're proposing to go on. It's all publicly available. Has been since day one. Their response objective number 2. The first objective was to air monitor the site to make sure as they were working, if they were exposed to any hazardous vapors, chemicals in the air, that they were properly protected. Their number 2 objective, and the reason I say it's number 2, is to remove debris and clear safe pathways and work zones. And I'll give you an idea of what I mean by that. During the week of 4/6/19, they removed 480 cubic yards of solid waste, 280 cubic yards of scrap metal for recycling. In and around all of this non-hazardous debris, 180 containers of hazardous waste was categorized. The picture I'm trying to create for you is the magnitude of trash and debris intermingled with the hazardous waste. And the reason I mention that is the size up of trying to determine how much was really there.
And were those barrels clearly marked, or were they just barrels?
There's barrels. This was not a hazardous material manufacturing site. This was essentially a dumping site. So there's no rules at play here. Had this been a manufacturing facility of hazardous materials similar to Dice Chemical next door, They would have all of their information going to the LEPC, the Local Emergency Planning Committee. They would have reporting requirements. They would have requirements to show this is the containers, the amounts of size, how we mitigate a spill. All of that would be known by the local government. This was just a place where people put stuff, and they may have been properly labeled, they may not have.
No skull and crossbones.
And it's your guess if it's accurate. So 180 containers was categorized. This illustrates the volume of junk, trash, and debris intermingled with hazardous waste. By the first week of May, get this, 1,680 cubic yards of solid waste, 570 cubic yards of metal for recycling was removed in order to safely categorize 2,100 containers with potentially hazardous materials in them. What I mean by potentially is that the container appears like it could have, does, or has contained hazardous material in the past. To give you an example, within the second week, Paul called me and said, hey, we've got some containers that look like they contain military ordinances. Can you help me with that? Sure. We called Hillfield. We brought the bomb squad in from Hillfield. They did the research on the containers that appeared to at one point in time contain explosive ordinances. The initial assessment was there was something inside these containers. Went through the whole process out there. What they determined, they were all empty. They had water in them because they leaked and water leaked into them. But we had to go through all the safety precaution because we didn't know who put them there. Nobody could validate why they were there. It was a container that had explosive nature descriptions on the outside of the container. Hillfield guys researched and says, yeah, these were from World War II. But water was inside. There was no hazard, no danger. The process illustrates the magnitude of the challenge in knowing what was and is truly present on the site. The focus objective is to safely and effectively remove this target hazard from our community and environment. The Weber River, the people in and around it. That's what we're there to protect. The city's determination to utilize EPA has already proven financially sound in terms of mitigation and cleanup. And I'll give you one example that they've done it here. You can read it on the site tonight. One example is they found 360 pounds of calcium hydride and 351 pounds of magnesium. And these were used militarily. So once again, going back to what Mark explains about who's going to ultimately be responsible about, that chapter has not been written, according to CERCLA. Of that amount of base, and it was dangerous, and if a typical third party had to take care of that, disposing of that, they would have to properly package it and then properly take it to a place where it could dispose. But since EPA was handling this, and it has to be done to EPA standards, they met their own standards on site. They also found 125 gallons of sulfuric acid and 165 gallons of phosphoric acid, which had been abandoned on the site. Well, guess what they did? They used all that acid to neutralize all that base on site. So they used two wastes economically and neutralized that to render it non-hazardous. Didn't have to transport it off site, and they have very little byproduct they have to dispose of now that's been neutralized. This is just an example of how mitigating the cost. I talked to one of the not reporters from the EPA. Because of the size of this site, they have to write a report on how well they interacted with the public and the community and so forth. And one of the things I asked the gal yesterday about how's it going, and she said one of the great things we're doing because we're here is we're using some chemists from the Navy, and all we have to pay is per diem. So that's going to keep the costs down. So they're taking advantage of everything they can because they know at the end of the day, whether it's federal, local, state government, it's government costs. They're trying to mitigate it the best they can, as cheaply as they can, as safely as they can. To date, none of this hazardous waste mitigation has caused injury or environmental contamination since efforts have commenced. Not one damage has occurred, not one mishap has occurred. We very much appreciate that. The pre-purchase inspection, you've talked about this, but I'll just read this briefly. There's been some speculation the city did not have the opportunity to inspect the premises before it acquired the site. That is incorrect. The city consultant inspected the premise during the purchase agreement due diligence period and estimated the cleanup scope before the city acquired the property. As a result, the inspection purchase price was substantially reduced, as you stated, from $1,085,000 down to $400,000. So a $700,000 reduction almost because of what additional mitigation costs were estimated. The container count. This is an important point for all the citizens to know and to hopefully put you guys at ease. Another issue recently raised was a difference in escalation of projected number of suspected containers found on the site. Initial reports were roughly 40,000. That 40,000 was through the Brownsfield assessment. The number is affected by a couple of things explained by EPA that wasn't put in the article. Talked to Paul today about it. Example, a sizable box on a pallet contains tubes of calcium hypochlorite. The tubes originally were to disinfect water for military. So they're out there and they needed to disinfect water for personal use. Within this big box that's on a pallet, there's 50 boxes in the one box. Within the 50 boxes, there's 12 containers or tubes that contain this calcium hypochlorite. In total, there were 5,400 of these containers. This size of a Sharpie. So when you look at why are we escalating in count of containers, one box turned into 5,400 containers. Because you don't go in and detailed inspect every single box, every single drum, every single container when you do a size up of the situation. You size it up. Now when you're into the weeds, one box contains 5,400 containers, all of which they took this, put it in water, burst it, turned it into chlorine bleach, neutralized it, rendered it non-hazardous. Example 2, EPA must categorize every container they check by their practice. The site has many military containers or other types that are simply empty. To date, the container count is at, and you can find us on the website. It's a really cool chart they put up on their website. As of last week, last Friday, there was 41,355 containers. Now let me explain the breakdown of those containers. 12,596 were treated, so they had some type of hazardous waste. 14,630 were disposed of, thrown away. Oh, and 14,000 were empty. Paul told me today that he roughly estimates that 2/3 of these containers that they will analyze will be empty. These two examples explain why the estimates of the numbers of containers are growing. It's about semantics of definition. Every single container they have to check, they call it a container. From a public safety view, this is where I get a little bit goofy. The fire department appreciates the action of the city and EPA in its swift removal of this hazard from our city. It only took me about 3 seconds to come up with that. In speaking with the lead representative of EPA, he was on one site in Utah. He told me this today. One site in Utah, in another county, where it took 3 years to work with the private party that owned that property to do the cleanup. 3 years of having that risk present. You mentioned this earlier, mitigating, getting rid of it. We're going to get rid of a monumental risk in our community in 6 months because we acquired it. Now, I'm not talking about the financial terms. Those are things to be dealt with later, but just in terms of eliminating the risk as quickly as possible. That 3-year cleanup occurred after 4 to 6 years of legal litigation. So that site was contaminated for 9 years, working through all the legal maneuvering on a federal level, EPA, and with a private owner that didn't want to relinquish or recognize that they had a hazardous cleanup site. So we're doing it in a very short time. The determination of how the cleanup costs are apportioned to the responsible party is a matter of later determination. And that gets into the whole federal piece and the CERCLA and who owns whatever commodities have been found and who was the ultimate owner of that. Yet to be determined. And so the cost apportioned is not yet determined. Right now, the city is focused on protecting its citizens and the environment. Number one focus. And I think we're doing it. And I think EPA is doing it well. I can tell you about one other mitigation effort they asked me about today. They've got another item out there, some solid naphtha they want to get rid of. It's flammable. They have a concern. DOT classifies it as a non-hazardous material. There's 600 pounds of it, 600 gallons of it. They don't want to put it in the hazardous waste or into the regular waste stream. Not because they can't, but because they don't think it's a good idea, because any friction or any disturbance of it could start a fire. We could have a fire in the landfill. They said we think we can mitigate it much more efficiently. We can take it and dispose of it as hazardous waste and cost up to $10,000 to ship it to 3 states away because of the package, or we possibly can get rid of it on site, possibly burn it in small quantities on site. What they're doing is checking with the health department, DEQ, air quality, fire department from a risk standpoint to determine if that's a cost-effective, safe way of eliminating that particular hazard. We'll continue to work with them on mitigating this hazard. Paul said that today, he says that the city is extremely fortunate that the way they've handled this. He's not speaking in regards of the redevelopment portion of this issue. He's speaking in the process of you are eliminating a significant risk in your community in a very short period of time. Many communities have these, just like it was mentioned in the article, they said they correlated that another hazardous material site back in Maine that took 2 decades to clean up. Didn't take 2 decades to clean up. It took 2 decades of all the legal issues, all the arguing, all the other stuff, then the cleanup occurred. Wouldn't have taken 2 years to actually do the cleanup, or 20 years to actually do the cleanup. So just keep in mind that first 2,100 items that they categorized would have taken, an average cement truck holds 10 yards of concrete. That would have been 60 cement trucks removing debris before they could get to 2,100 containers to categorize what they have there. You can see the complexity and the challenge of this effort out there. And we very much appreciate from the fire department that this is being mitigated so we don't have anybody killed in this facility or we don't have an environmental catastrophe. Thank you.
Don't go far, Chief, in case there's questions. I just want to play what if for a minute. What if we hadn't bought the property? And if the owners before we bought it, who we bought it from, decided that the risk of how much it would cost to clean up didn't, then we would have put citizens at risk. We would have put the river at risk. We would have put maybe firefighters at risk. Because if that building had caught on fire and they had gone and fought the fire with what we've learned is it was in there, we could have had firefighters killed as a result. So even though that's maybe a damned if we do, damned if we don't kind of a scenario, but by purchasing it, we were able to begin to clean it up, where if we didn't purchase it, we didn't have control. One of the questions or comments that was made, I want Mr. Williams to comment on, and that is the ability we have to enforce on private property, especially when we don't know exactly what's there. And by the way, this property has had rumors since I was a little boy about what was in it. And we have found that the trainload of silver nickels we didn't find. That was one of the rumors over the years. So, Gary, will you respond to what we can do, what we can inspect legally, and how we invite ourselves onto private property?
It is a complicated process. You have to have cause to go and get a warrant to go into the property. You have to have a basis for doing so. You could have called the EPA right away, and they might have used federal power to come in, but it would have been very much like the other county example that the chief gave, that there will be a long process, a battle over whether it is or isn't hazardous waste, and the inspection process, and whether they can dispose of it another way on their own, as opposed to the way the EPA would like to have it done. And so what we did in this case was control the project and therefore control the outcome.
I was in the building and at one time, and I didn't see half the barrels that they're talking about, because there was so much clutter and so much stuff in that building. You couldn't see everything that was in there and probably couldn't identify it. I think for the safety of our citizens, for the safety of West Ogden, I think we absolutely did the right thing. We're hoping for a really good outcome. We don't know what the outcome's going to be. And just to tell you, we're told that we might not know the outcome for a few years. The EPA has up to 3 years, I think, to come back to us to tell us how they're going to take care of things. So we don't really know how quickly that's going to happen, and we won't profess to you tonight that we know. We can tell you that Ogden is safer, the river is safer, the environment is safer as a result of what we did and the action that you took. We gave you every piece of information we had at the time. And we're coming today and giving you every piece of information we have at the time. And, you know, when the article came out, we've spent quite a bit of time sitting down and analyzing and saying, did we do the right thing? Are we doing the right thing? And I think we're convinced that we absolutely had the best interests of the citizens in mind. What the costs are going to be, we hope we can mitigate. We hope that enough of this will be charged somewhere else and our citizens don't have to bear the burden of it. But what's the price of a firefighter or a squad of firefighters or a couple blocks in West Ogden? What's the price of that? I can't establish a price on that. But I sleep a lot better knowing that a lot of this stuff has been taken care of by an organization that knows what they're doing. I don't know if we're ready for questions or if we've answered everything that you would wanted us to. No, Mr. Cooper won't feel bad if you don't have a question for him.
Mark, one question is that if we didn't step in and purchase the property, then this Smith family had the opportunity of selling this to another party. Would that be correct?
They could have sold it. They could have just sat on it. And I think it was a ticking time bomb from what I know. It worried me when I read the article. I didn't check with the chief to see if this is true, if we had 2 fires there when we had some of that stuff in there. I mean, we literally could have lost firefighters because they would have not been using the right substance to put the fire out. I mean, that's a really dangerous thing to be putting public safety at harm's way and other people in harm's way. So I'm grateful that we've gone forward. I think we followed instincts. We did the right thing to follow those instincts. So to answer your question, yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. So I just wanted, before we'll get to you next, Luis, I'm not happy if there's additional costs to the city at all. But I know in my day job and having worked in environmental remediation, not in the chemical side, but on the environmental remediation, the bureaucracy and the procedure, the cost, the length of time involved, I have always known of Superfund sites and remediations taking so long. But this process has forced us to reconsider decision we made. And we look at the information that we had, which was everything that you had. And that's, if I put myself in that situation again, I'm going to make that same decision. If I'm in that same position today, with the information we have today, I would be even more scared than we were when we were learning about this. I mean, let's be honest, this is a terrible thing, right? And if we had to consider city money at that time, for whatever the difference might be, I don't know. I probably would have said yes to that too, because we were not going to wait 10 years with that there. There's no way. And then the what if game, that scared me when I saw in the article that there were 2 fires. I mean, if there are water soluble chemicals in this building and we are sending firefighters to spray water on a fire that we didn't know was there, yeah, this community needs to step up. It's going to cost us taxpayer dollars to do the right thing. For any one firefighter is worth a whole heck of a lot more than whatever the difference may or may not be. So it's easy to look back in retrospect and say, why didn't we catch all of it in due diligence? But if you go back in the record, we still knew there was a chance that it was more. I remember asking Brandon, is this the worst case scenario, right? And you said, it's what we think is worst case scenario. And it's worse than that, right? And so I still have anxiety about additional cost, but I would have had way more anxiety about sitting on that thing in that place for all of the years that it would take for a private owner to handle it, if ever.
Chair, just one other clarification from the article that I think is fair to make. The seller who sold us the property did so after her husband passed away. My feeling is she really didn't know what was in that building. And I think it was unfairly characterized as a family business that's in Willard that owned it, and that's not true. It was a Sempra corporation that owned it, and I think in fairness to that business in Willard, that was unfairly represented, and I don't want to see their business besmirched because of that. I just thought I would like to correct that.
Thank you. I promise to get back to you, Luis. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple quick comments and questions. My first question is, knowing what we know now, is there any legal recourse or liability on the previous owners of these property for what they store there that we have to pursue?
Can I, before I give that to Gary, I think that's a difficult one for us to answer right now because we don't know enough, and two, I don't know that we want to expose legal strategy. So yeah, I think everything's on the table still, and I think we're willing to look at that, but I don't know that we know enough yet to do that. But when that happens, I think we would be sitting down with you and talking about it.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate the fact that that's probably being considered. Obviously,
nothing's off the table.
Okay. My other two comments real quick is one, I know that I'm always very critical of sometimes certain things that happen, and I'm outspoken about it. And if in this situation that is happening now, I didn't do the opposite, which is to just basically echo what's been said by all of you here and praise the work that happened and praise the people that putting all this work and all this effort and all this time to do the best they could to clean up and to acquire that property that we all felt could be a risk to the community. Then if I didn't say that and praise the people for that, then I would feel really bad about it. So I just wanted to say that and thank you. And the last comment I have, Chair, is you've often heard me a lot. You've heard me talk about our citizens coming here to speak and them not having the ability when we're having these conversations, when we're done, to come back somehow to give us their feedback after this debate and these conversations been happening, after they ask questions. We always have the last word, and I've said it before. I don't like that. I know that we've made improvements in our norms to allow for more public engagement, but this is one example of how I think and feel that maybe some of our citizens here may feel like they want to come back and comment. And I'm not saying that we have to do that now, because I'm not about to suggest that we break our norms. But what I'm saying is I really wish we take a little more time. It's not that hard. I don't think it's that hard to think about a way. This doesn't happen that often. This happens 2 or 3 times a year, that we have these kinds of really deep discussions. And the public leaves, I think, feeling a little powerless, that they couldn't come back and address us with their reaction to the conversation that just happened here. And it's against the norms to clap, just so you know. I'm just kidding. I'm serious, but I'm kidding. I'm kidding and I'm serious. So, as you know, Chair, it's just my way to air and bring about what I think is very important that we should address.
I think it is within our norms, unless I'm corrected, that if we want to make a motion to open public comment again after we continue our dialogue, I don't think that's out of bounds.
We have an expert on our norms.
Yeah.
Well, there was one other thing that, I think we kind of talked around a little bit, was like, what else could we be paying for with the BDO? I don't know if you want to talk about the BDO revenue at all, Brandon. That might be.
I've got that
it's
one.
the one thing that I have left on the list that I don't know that we've addressed.
We have money budgeted currently. We're suspecting that it may not be quite enough, and if so, then we will look through where we can find money to come suggest to be able to pay that. Most of the one-time money that we have available as a city comes from the BDO lease revenue money. And granted, if we take it from there, we'll be taking it from funds that maybe could be used somewhere else. But again, the life safety issues, in my opinion, have to trump anything else we probably could have done with that money. So, but that, I don't know where we would come up with more money yet. That would be something we'd have to sit down and work on. If I don't know for 2 or 3 years, I don't really know how long this is going to be before somebody comes and says, this is your portion, pay this. I don't know when that is. We're working on the demolition side right now, trying to get bids so that as soon as EPA is done, we can take down the building.
Ralph, you coming back? Are you coming back? I had a comment and I wanted to say to Ralph. So. Sorry, go ahead.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we addressed.
So Ralph is gone, but the comment I was going to make, in addition to what you said about the public interaction, is I wanted to apologize to Ralph because I noticed that I asked Chalet and Sue if I covered everything. And as soon as I did, and they started to talk back, I thought I shouldn't have done that because it invited a violation of our norms. And so when Ralph tried to do the same innocently, I cut him off because I had told myself I had already made that mistake once. I'm not going to make it twice. Yeah. But Ralph doesn't know that, what I thought in my mind. Yeah. All Ralph thought was, you let them talk, but you didn't let me talk. And I wanted to tell him that before he left, and I'm really hurt. I'm upset. Yeah, I'm sad that he left. And so I will call him and tell him that because he needs to know that. I don't want him to think, what is it about me that I don't get to talk with? What is it about them that they get to? That's my fault, not his. Okay, the issue of the BDO lease revenue.
Oh yeah.
Does that cover it?
I think so.
Okay.
To answer the question.
I think the quote in the paper, I think context was important. Mm-hmm. We are, I don't remember the exact quote, but we are very blessed to have BDO lease revenue in this community. I guess the context of that quote, some people took it to mean that we flippantly use BDO revenue. That's not the case. Oh, I really appreciated Chief Matthew. Did he already? Oh, there. I really appreciate the clarification on the container thing.
There he is.
He came back. Don't leave again until I really appreciate the clarification on the containers because to me, I was like, something is not right. There is no way we underestimated by that much. There's just like, I have suspended judgment on that issue, thinking something's not right, right? And you brought tremendous clarity, so thank you. And also, I really appreciate that you came to this mic and talked about the work that you and others have been doing, because when you come here and you talk to us, speaking for myself, I believe you because I have always gotten the truth from you. We always have. That's my opinion. You are a man of character who comes with that character and credibility to the mic, and that means a ton to me, so thank you. Thank you for being that man. Ralph, I told the crowd that I owe you an apology. I am sorry. And that's why I didn't want you to leave. Because I noticed that I made a mistake, a procedural mistake, when I asked the two women that were sitting in the front if I covered all of their questions and I invited them to talk to us in violation of our norms. I mistakenly encouraged them to violate our rules and norms. And I told myself as soon as they started to talk, I know, but it's okay. It's okay. No, this is important because I know you're not, but it's still important. I told myself I made a mistake and I shouldn't have done that. And so I was prepared when you tried to do innocently the same thing. And I stopped you, and it's not because of you. Okay. God bless you. Okay. Are there any lingering questions from the council or the board tonight that we wish to ask the administration? Do we want to invite another round of public comment? Anybody want to make a motion? Is that something that's allowed? No, we were going to get to that.
I was going to just throw out there, I was actually working on the rules and norms update from earlier, just to try to expedite the process, but having this open. So with the reference to the public comment portion, it does indicate that if a council member has a question or a comment relative to public comment, they can allow one additional 1 minute be provided for that public commenter. However, there is a lot more discretion in your rules and norms if you do want to, reopen public comments or that. But that's ultimately where that falls on public comment section.
Okay.
With that in mind, I would make a motion that we allow anyone who has previously given comment an additional minute to come forward and say what they have to say about that.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy. We have a motion by Board Member Heyer, second by Board Member Lopez, to reopen public comment for the duration of 1 minute for those who commented previously. I believe, is this a roll call vote? Voice vote? Okay, this is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we will invite additional public comment if you wish to address the board.
Thank you, Monica Hall. Just want to say one thing. I'm a big fan of what the city is doing on many levels, and I'm also a big fan of inquiry. And so if I don't ask the questions, then I don't get the answers. And some assumptions that you can make from something I know can be wrong. And so I needed to be here. I thought that I would be more than myself here tonight talking to you about that. And I don't know what that means for our city. I do want to say this. What I care about the most is that my husband and I discussed this for probably 6 hours. He was sick of me talking about it yesterday. I do care that we bought this building. And I know that I do care about that part because what we bought versus what we have to wait out for 3 more years to get it, I get what that's about. So I have to say, I yield to your wisdom there from being here today. And I thank you for that. This is like the freaking debates, man. Thank you.
I was going to be lenient and let you keep going, but it was really fun to watch you be frustrated. Well, that doesn't mean you come back. Okay. There I go, baby. I did it again.
I love you all.
We love you too.
We're getting there, Monica.
Yeah, it's
we're getting there.
8:10, so we're
Okay.
isn't it?
Okay, anybody else care to address the board again? Yeah, buddy.
You need to get a little lube for your chair there, Ralph.
Well, you know, it's not moving, it's your bus drivers.
Oh.
Don't worry, I'm going there next. I'm Ralph Price, and I just want to say this. I want to be an example right here. I'm sitting here in this chair. I've been here 4 years because of this fact right here. Because there's been sites, they call it Sarah Village and places like that. There were years ago that officers and people used to be able to live, well, had farmland and out with Lake Utah that we had, and there was businesses that had this type of thing. That ground was contaminated. It took us 40 years of farming that ground for it to get up to the surface enough that I walked on it. And now I have no right leg. I have saving this left leg, although I'm going to get a prosthetic. I'm a 2-time Olympian. Went 2 times to the Olympics in soccer, played football, all kinds of stuff. Duran had done this. Now I'm in this chair. I was supposed to be in this chair for the rest of my life, but God is good. He blessed me that I'm going to be walking in maybe a month and a half. But I'm just telling you, do not err. You did right by buying it, but do not slack up on anything. He's right about everything. That ground could be something that happens and puts good people out of commission. I just don't let it stop me.
Thank you, Ralph. I think a former NFL draft pick by the Chargers. Did I get that? Raiders. This is one of them Cali teams that I don't support. Just kidding.
So I'll make this quick. So thank you for a lot of the information that was provided. I think it does provide a different perspective. And although I still think that, I think the city purchasing the property and the fact that it's going to be cleaned within 6 months is great, as opposed to 20 years or however many years it could have taken because of litigation work. However, I still think that if the city purchases a property with even 1 barrel of toxic waste, that's too much. And maybe there's some additional questions that need to be incorporated into the process. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that last time. Thanks.
Thank you. Any others?
Angel Castillo. I would like to thank you for the information that you provided. It was very helpful. And it's clear that the city made a decision based on public safety, But we still see and have seen in the past, there is really some huge disconnect between communication between the administration and community buy-in. I think that rather than just telling people about what's happening after it's happened, we need to be more engaged in the process. We need to openly discuss these types of things and say, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is a risk to our community. This is a risk to our river. So here's what we're going to do. And then give the community a chance to participate in that. And I know that everyone will say it's on public record, but as we all have discovered, your engagement when you start streaming things on Facebook, it goes way up. You're getting more emails now. We need to change the way that we communicate and connect with the community so that we really and truly make decisions based on what the community wants and needs as we continue to grow.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. I think we're good. I'm glad we did that, actually. I've been thinking along some similar lines to the last comment about communication. We want to be trusted, but you're not just trusted by asking. You got to be trusted by showing and earning it. And I told the reporter when I was interviewed, I said, what do you need from us? We'll give you anything and everything. Everything we're doing is on public record, but that doesn't mean that everyone's watching it. But it means we don't have anything to hide. There's certain things in the work that we do that require confidentiality for very, very legitimate reasons. But we do need to have a relationship of trust with the people that we serve. And I think that's something that this council has taken really serious, and I'm really proud of. And it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's not going to change overnight. It's going to have to be incremental, as frustrating as that is. And it's not what I thought it would be when we started this. But I really appreciate that you guys come here frustrated, that you were engaged enough to care enough to be upset and to talk to your husband for 6 hours, right? And so, that's a great thing. And that you come here and you're getting answers at the same time that we're getting answers, and that you get to ask your questions, and then we hope that you get to ask them again, and that you get to watch us ask the questions. We should always be operating in this way. And so if we didn't quite do that in this case, that back then, well, we're going to commit to do better. And if time tells that we look back on the decision that we made and we regret it, I'll own my vote. I will. If I made a mistake, I just, some have heard me say this. I hope you know that we're making an honest mistake. But at this point, I just still am not quite sure we made a mistake in light of what we've found. And that's not to make light the amount of money that could potentially come out of the city's pockets. But again, it's not a sure thing to us at all. But I'll tell you what, even if we assume that we budgeted $600,000, which we actually budgeted more than that, that was just the extra round of renegotiation, and it cost $2 million, and the difference is $1.4 million. I'm not going to sit on $1.4 million and years and years and years of that sitting there with that safety threat there. I just can't see myself having made that decision in retrospect, in hindsight, So we appreciate you guys coming here to hear all of this, and thanks administration for providing anything and everything that we asked for and that people are asking for. Anything else from anyone else?
Quick question, Chair. Even though the topic is centered around the SWIFT building, to me, the fact that we were able to have these exercise to allow allow our citizens to come back, to me, that's very, very important. I wonder, maybe for Janine, do you know if this that you remember has ever done before?
Not that I remember, that I recall, no.
So to me, Chair, this is almost a little bit of a historic moment. That if I think you know me very well. I feel very strongly these are the people's chambers, right? We work for these people that are here, sitting in those chairs, and so to me that was very powerful tonight. So thank you. I appreciate to all my colleagues and to our staff for continuing to work towards creating this environment of more better engagement and a better process here in our chambers. Thank you so much.
Yeah, when we're talking about the change of a culture of an organization and a government body and political bodies and entities, that's what might seem so small is actually a symptom of something so big. That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Totally agree, and I love how much you care about the people you serve, and I feel the same way. I think we all do.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's comments from the executive director pro tem or designee.
Thank you. I just want to say to Mr. Price, we've enjoyed hearing your perspectives, and I think Mr. Louder has a meeting with him scheduled for August 5th because we want to learn a little more and we want to get a little smarter. So we just want to say to you, thank you. And there isn't a better person in the city to listen to those concerns than Jay Louder. He's worked here, I think, 105 years, but he's over streets and sidewalks, and he's over all the infrastructure. And so I think we can learn from you, and we appreciate your willingness to come and try and help us educate that. I really appreciate the citizens who have come to talk. I don't think and by the way, Mayor Caldwell's not here tonight. His parents are celebrating a golden wedding anniversary, and he's where he probably needs to be celebrating with them. But if he was here, he would tell you we're not perfect, and we are trying our very best to get better and better and better. We thank you for your patience with us. We are willing to disclose whatever we can. When we first started to realize the seriousness of this, we had a balance. We were a little torn. Let me tell you why. Because as soon as Mr. Smith died, we were having a hard time keeping people out of the building because of the rumors that have gone on for 40 or 50 years. And we were a little nervous about people finding out really what was in that building, because there are people who would like to take that stuff and do things with it that probably wouldn't be in the best interest of our community. So I think that there was a balance, but we decided we needed to be as forthright as we possibly could. But with the danger in that building and our concern whether we could keep people out, we were a little nervous about how much to wave the flag saying we've got these problems here in this building, if that makes sense. So we were kind of weighing public information and security and safety to our citizens. So we tried our best, and I think we'll get better and better and better. I just want to say that probably we need to apologize to Luis. I don't think it's our intention to frustrate him. I think our purpose is what we really want to do is listen and try and see if we can't get better. And we appreciate his comments. They aren't offensive to us. We really want to be inclusive to everyone in our community. And our desire is to do that. And I hope you know if we have offended you or have offended how we've done things, we are sorry. Because we wouldn't do that for anything. We have the same desires I think you do. And I apologize to you publicly on the record if we have not done that in the past.
Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate it.
And I want to thank you as a council. I appreciate your support as we bring some of these projects to light and to you. You have great faith. Not only is Mike Matthew a man of integrity, as Chair has pointed out, but so is Gary Williams, and so is Brandon Cooper, and so is Jay Louder, and so is Justin, and I could go around the room of our employees. We have, in my opinion, the finest people I have ever worked with in my 50 years of work. And I've been working a long time. And I don't know that I've ever worked with a better bunch of people who have higher integrity or desire to do the right thing for our community. Not always is it recognized, and not only is it interpreted that way, but every one of them is somebody who I would stand with and behind 100% because they work hard, they do their best, and they want to do what's best for our community. Like I said, we aren't perfect, but we are doing our very, very best. So we thank you for tonight. We're thankful that you allowed us the opportunity to come and to be able to give some answers. I have a copy of this, what Chief Matthews read. It isn't got all his words because he did embellish a little along the way. which is okay because that's Chief Matthews if you got to love that. But I'm happy to give this to Janine, and if you guys want a copy of this, you're welcome to have a copy of it. So thank you again for letting me have a moment.
Absolutely. And that Swift joke he had. We'll just categorize that with the other dad jokes that we weren't supposed to
He
laugh
doesn't specialize in humor for our city, but he's a pretty good guy otherwise. Golf is where he
I just thought to myself,
specializes.
man, I must be getting old if I'm laughing at that.
Or it's late at night.
I found it funny. That's not good. Okay. All right. Comments from board members. We've had a million of them. If anybody has anything left.
I don't want to make the meeting any longer than it already has been, but boy, you know what? I got to echo what Marcus said. I am so grateful to be working with you individuals. Not a greater accumulation of people have I ever worked with. And I admire and respect each of you, especially our city staff and department directors. I love you guys. You guys are great.
We love you too, man.
Thanks.
Like 11.
Yeah. Should we hug? Oh, God. Don't worry. We won't hug.
Just a brief comment. You know, I think one of the things that's always very interesting to me is how social media plays out and how comments are made. And I would hope and reach out to any one of us. I mean, we all answer our phones and can tell you the history of what we did and why we did it. And if we don't know, we will definitely get the answers. And so social media can be a great communication tool, but it can also be a really divisive tool. And I think I just encourage anyone that has any more questions, again, to reach out on any issue, not just this issue. So.
I answer my phone better than I answer my Facebook posts, by the way.
Thank you, Marcia. Anyone else?
I think the comment this evening that this is the people's court is here, and so I think that's very appropriate of this chambers, is that this is where the people need to have an opportunity to voice their opinion. And I think the goal of not only the council but the administration is to be as transparent as we can. And you know, there are areas that we can improve on, and we'll try to do that. And Chief, I appreciate the information. What has been said here about you and your character is, I can't add any more to that. But I don't have any jokes for you, Chief. But I think all of our administration, our directors, are of the same caliber. They're professional individuals who care about the city and have committed to the citizens of this area. And I think it's a pleasure to serve with my fellow council members, but also our council staff who keeps us on the straight and narrow. They point out things that we need to consider, but it's up to us to make that choice and that choice. And again, the administration, we need to be separate, but there is a time that we need to work together to move this city along. And we don't rubber stamp anything, but if it is good and profitable for Ogden City, then I'm for that process.
You may not have a joke for the chief, but I think I heard a Judge Wapner reference there. Did I get that right? Did anybody else catch the People's Court? Oh, yeah, okay, anyway. Anyone else?
No, do we need to do this?
Yeah, maybe. I personally don't care how long meetings take if there's something that needs to be done. Tonight's conversation had to happen. So,
Chair,
thanks everybody for sticking it out. Yeah.
just to council board member Hires comment, I think what's the most valuable about this government that we work for is the ability to debate issues and to dissent on issues like today. There was a dissenting vote, and to be respectful and civil about our differences. So I think that's what I think I value that greatly. Thank you.
Good job, everybody. Thank you so much for everything. The next item on our agenda is a closed executive session.
Chair, I would make a motion that we adjourn into a closed executive session for one of the purposes listed.
Do you second the remainder of it?
Aye.
We have a motion by Board Member Heyer, second by Board Member Lopez to adjourn into a closed executive session. This is a roll call vote. Sorry, guys, we're still got to take a vote real quick.
Board Member Heyer.
Aye.
Board Member Lopez.
Aye.
Board Member Stevens.
Aye.
Board Member White.
Aye.
Board Member Blair.
Aye.
Vice Chair Chaburka.
Aye.
Chair Nadolski.
Aye. That passes. We'll adjourn into a closed executive session, and we'll just remind those that are in attendance that we will be adjourning from this meeting in that meeting. So thank you for coming.